Hi there. Today we're going to talk about Soldier Spy by Tom Marcos. A little bit of background. When the British Army had to counter the IRA threat in Northern Ireland, they soon required an intelligence gathering and surveillance capability. And they eventually, in the early 70s, set up such a unit, and for the surveillance techniques, they had a look at what the intelligence corps did, which was mainly to follow Soviet military intelligence personnel in Germany, and also MI5, who were mainly involved against Soviet intelligence officers in London, and also any people that they recruited, i.e. traitors. So it required a certain type of tradecraft, but it wasn't really suited to the terrorist task in Ireland. So it had to be adapted. And then the whole thing was run through the prism of special forces. The SAS ran the selection course and also provided quite a bit of the hard skills training for the unit, which became known by various names. 14 Int was the longest one, but within the community was usually known as the Det. And indeed, initially, before it really got started, half of B Squadron 22 SAS actually fulfilled the role for a while. Anyway, so it was from that unit, which later expanded to a global role as the Special Reconnaissance Regiment. But a member of the unit, Tom Marcos, was tapped on the shoulder, as it were, by MI5, because MI5 had also gone into the business of having to counter extremist terrorism within the United Kingdom. And so the focus had shifted from the Soviet threat to international and domestic terrorism. And so they leavened their surveillance capability, which is known as A4, with people with background in the Det. So Tom Marcos went over to A4, but he had to undergo their training program first, and the book describes it in some detail, starting off with driving training, going out, vehicle handling, giving a commentary of whatever you're seeing, what the target's doing, and so on. And this commentary method is also used in other forms of training, such as in VIP protection, because it's the way to really engage situational awareness. And after you've done it for quite a short while, it becomes automatic, and you don't have to actually verbalize what you're seeing, but the process has become ingrained. So the driver training finishes with a long and very arduous fast run up the motorway, following a target and having to give a continuous commentary and pass various tests. The next on the training phase was foot surveillance and going after targets who were instructors themselves, who were surveillance conscious, and demonstrated various counter surveillance routines that the followers had to adapt to and counter. And alongside that, the instructors would test the students on their observation and memory. You know, what was the license plate of the car round the corner? various street names that they passed and so on. It was all tested. Descriptions of people, the guy sitting in the doorway, what kind of shoes was he wearing, this kind of thing. So what they wanted, what they were looking for, were people who were highly observant, highly resourceful, could adapt to various situations, but could blend in and perform the surveillance duties without anyone noticing. And this is the important thing, and this really is where A4 of MI5 triumphed. Whereas the Det are were the world leaders in hostile territorial surveillance against a very active terrorist threat, but also in a population that was hostile to them, and hence needed to be armed and able to fight. With MI5, it was a different requirement, but nevertheless, the ability to blend in and to maintain the surveillance net on a target who may be planning catastrophic terrorist attack was very, very important. And Tom Marcus makes the point that some of the other surveillance agencies, the police, the customs and so on, they don't have this capability to the same extent. Their dress, the makeup of the teams, they haven't got the cultural makeup of the teams, for example, to go against Islamic targets and things like this, which MI5 has. So he's deployed to a team, and he's working out on the ground, and he talks about some of the operations he's been engaged in. One was against extremists from Northern Ireland, but who were in Scotland, in Glasgow. They were from the Protestant side, the Unionist side, but they were terrorists nonetheless. And he had to go into a pub and see who was meeting and kind of identify some personalities. And he explains the tradecraft necessary for this, his cover, how he blended in, his mannerisms within the pub, and not once, and the targets are sitting at a table, not once does he even look in their direction. He gathers the information he needs to, and it shows the sensitivity of the task and the level of training needed to accomplish it. And another operation he talks about was against a target up in the north of England that they called, this was an Islamic extremist, they called Grass Widow. That was his code name. They codename all the targets. And they followed him for a long time, and he finally threw a SIM card into a waste bin, and they recovered it, and from that they got contacts, and they were able to roll up over 30 other people in the net, and long prison sentences ensued. The book really talks about, or doesn't overtly talk about it, but it shows how surveillance done in the real world is completely different from what we see in movies. You know, in movies, a guy comes out of his house, gets into the car, and the police officers in plain clothes start up behind him, and off they go in trail. Very, very obvious. In the real world, it's not done like that at all. And also then in some of the spy films you get where there's a surveillance net operating in an area, and the ops room's telling each of the operators what to do. That's not how it's done either. The guy who's got the eyeball, who's in visual contact with the target, he really is commanding the effort at the time. And the ops room serves to support, to feed information, make sure that any other agencies that need to be informed are being informed, and so on. And is there just to provide what's needed. You know, if the target seen getting into someone's car, the option can come up with the registered owner and so on. This kind of thing. But they're not telling everyone go and stand on such a corner, that kind of thing. So another operation that they did was against the old enemy, the Russians, who are a continuing threat in the world, as we know. And there was a SVR operations being run out of the Russian embassy in Kensington, targeting our defence industry. And the book goes into quite a lot of detail about how they follow this guy, who is obviously an experienced intelligence officer and has great tradecraft, and it can actually become rather dangerous. So altogether, the book really does give you a fascinating insight, and probably a unique one. There haven't been that many books written about MI5, and the ones written by former officers are very, very few and far between. Off the top of my head, I can only think really Percy Sillitoe, who was a former Director General of the Security Service, who wrote his memoirs. I can't really think of any others. There's a few books written about MI5. Nigel West did one, for example. But Tom Marcus, he was obviously given clearance to write the book. And he starts suffering from PTSD. His wife, who was also an operator in the Det, you know, features in the story and is a great support to him, and he's got a child as well. But things come to a head, and he really is suffering from PTSD, and that's where the book ends. He's written a follow-up with some more of the activities of A4, which we'll no doubt review, and he's written two fictional books which were pretty good thrillers, and again I'll get around to reviewing those. But as I say, it's a unique view into a very, very specialised, very, very important and very, very secret world of surveillance.